Hey friends, welcome back. I've got summer food on the mind, and today I'm hoping to get you in the mood for all of the fresh and delicious sandwiches you can create. But before I get into that, I need to follow up with something I was talking about in the last video. Last week, I shared a recipe where I was using some homemade adobo seasoning, so this week I thought I would quickly show you how I made that. It's a very versatile seasoning blend, and it can be used on lots of different dishes. And the best part about this is you probably already have all of these ingredients in your pantry. We're going to start out with some salt. You're going to need some garlic. I'm using granulated garlic, but garlic powder is the best. Granulated garlic is coarser, so the powder just works a little bit better. And then you're going to need some oregano. You'll also need some turmeric. That's probably the only one you might not have in your pantry. And then also we're going to use some black pepper. So just these 5 simple ingredients for this basic adobo seasoning mix. I have this bottle of parsley flakes that is almost out, so I'm going to go ahead and use this to add my seasoning mix into. I may have mentioned to you that a few weeks ago my son and I were making our own spice blends, and we had so much fun, and we came up with some really delicious blends. But for this one, we're going to start out with 3 tablespoons salt. And one of the nice things about making your own blends is that you can customize it to your needs. I know I have a lot of viewers that are trying to eat low salt, so these homemade seasoning blends are great because obviously you can just add less salt and make your own delicious low sodium seasoning blends. All right, for the garlic, we're adding 2 tablespoons of garlic powder. Again, I've got the granulated garlic. It doesn't really matter that much, but garlic powder is preferable. And then 2 teaspoons of black pepper. You could obviously use white pepper if you want. And then we're going to use 1 teaspoon of turmeric. And this is in the ginger family. It's basically a root. You've seen me use this a lot on my channel. And then next we're going to add in some oregano. Here in the US, this is the typical oregano that you will find, but it's interesting because there are like 45 different species of oregano, and each one has a slightly different flavor. The one I'm using is common oregano, and it is strong and pungent. Then there's Greek oregano, which is known for its savory, slightly bitter flavor with hints of mint and lemon. And then there's Italian oregano, which is a hybrid of common oregano and marjoram, and it's slightly milder than the Greek oregano, and apparently they use that quite a bit on pizza. And then there's Mexican oregano, which is very popular in my area. It's usually sold in little bags in the Mexican food section, but it's not technically an oregano. However, it does taste kind of similar, and it has a citrusy flavor. It's often used in lots of different dishes in Mexican cuisine. It's used in like meat stews. It's used in beans and chili. I think they even use it in some enchiladas. There's also a Syrian oregano, which is used in za'atar, and I just started using that spice blend last year. That's actually a very popular Middle Eastern spice blend, and it's made of a mix of herbs just like this. It's got thyme, oregano, marjoram, and then some toasted sesame seeds and some sumac and sometimes salt. But that's a key ingredient and a spice blend that's used to top flatbreads and other things. And I want to work with that a little bit more here in the future. But I love these blends because you can generally just make these yourself with, the basic spices that you have on hand. You don't need a mortar and pestle to mix up your spices in. I just chose to do it this way because I wanted to break up the oregano a bit, but maybe you won't want to do that with yours. Maybe you will prefer to have your oregano in a more coarse form, but I thought that this would be best. I do have a funnel somewhere that probably would have made this a little bit easier. Anyway, this is really a good basic seasoning to have on hand, and since it does have a little bit more salt, it's a good basic all around seasoning. So instead of adding salt separately, obviously you just use this. Summer is almost here, and along with that comes a lot of sandwich eating in my house. And I can't stop thinking about all of the different kinds of sandwiches that I want to try this year. I really want this to be the summer that I develop some new sandwich recipes. So bread is one of my weaknesses. I love bread in all of its forms, and I like some for certain applications. One of my favorite breads lately is a bread that I pick up at Trader Joe's. And this is the multi-grain batard bread. And it has a lot of little, I don't know what these are, seeds, I guess, on the outside of it. Like most breads these days, it's kind of expensive, but it lasts me like a week and a half. And I usually like to have one piece of this for breakfast, but for this sandwich, I'm toasting it, and the pieces are kind of long, so I have to toast each side of the bread in my toaster. And then I'm using these Kumato brown tomatoes that I sometimes get at Trader Joe's, but you can use just regular Roma tomatoes, will be just fine. These are slightly sweeter than normal tomatoes. And like I said, I have to toast each side because these are so long. And then I'm going to use some mayo. For mine, I'm using a plant-based mayo. I actually prefer this to the regular mayo these days. And also I like the fact that I don't have to worry about food safety issues with eggs like you do with the traditional mayo. And I'm planning to make my own mayonnaise very soon because I do want to add my own ingredients in there and use some olive oil in it. So look for that very soon. So anyway, I'm going to add a generous amount of this to my bread. I think that this bread will be a little too chewy for some of you, but I do love the texture of it. It just makes this sandwich feel so substantial. It's like when I was showing you guys the black bean sandwich that I made. I used to eat that on a hamburger bun, but I started using it on these toasted sandwiches because I was out of the buns, and as it turns out, I actually like it so much better, and it just feels like a more substantial meal for me. And in the past, I never really thought to put pickles with the black bean patties, but it really works, and it's turned out to be one of my favorite sandwiches right now. Today I'm using this pepper jack cheese, but I've made the same sandwich with a sharp cheddar and really like that as well. But I was also thinking that a provolone cheese would work really well here. It's really about who do you want to be the star of the show. Sometimes I want the tomatoes to be the star of the show, and sometimes I want it to be the cheese. I'm always discovering new things that I like better just by going without, and trying new things, which is pretty much what my channel is all about. I added a small amount of salt and pepper. I love this balsamic glaze, and I especially use this a lot in summer. And of course, you can make your own, but I do just buy mine. Sometimes I eat it on this toast with some hummus and tomatoes, and other times I just eat it with some fresh vegetables. I'll show you a shot of that in a minute. But first, I'm going to try this sandwich. I've tried this with both cheddar and this pepper jack, and I like it with both. But this is so good. I just really love a basic cheese and tomato sandwich. It just really hits the spot. The batard bread is also great for grilled sandwiches, but now let me show you a sandwich that I like to make with bagels. Usually what I'll do is I'll get a certain kind of bread, and then obviously I'll just make different kinds of sandwiches all week with that, because it's usually just myself eating up these items. So, it takes me like a week to do that. And then I can really make one avocado last throughout lots of different sandwiches by just cutting off a quarter and then wrapping the avocado up tightly. And I get a lot of usage out of it. But I'm just going to cut a few slices. I also like to use small amounts in my salads because it really just elevates them to the next level. Sometimes I'll add chickpeas and some avocado with that. Here's a salad I had last week, and I'm calling it my first salad of the season. I had lots of avocados, some walnuts, some chickpeas, and then just some basic black olives, and it was so delicious. I'm going to use the avocado to add some moisture here and some creaminess. And I think when I was doing this video, I was probably on a very tight budget. If I wasn't, I would probably add avocado to both sides of this bagel. And sometimes I toast my bagel, just depending on whatever mood I'm in. And also sometimes I'll melt my cheese on one side of the bagel and then add my fresh ingredients on the other. But I also like to use lettuce and spinach. I think it makes a great combination, especially if I already have it. Just adds a little more nutrients to this. And I love to add some crunch, so I used some cucumbers. And those were Persian cucumbers, but English cucumbers are my second favorite because they have a low water content. But where I live, it's cheaper for me to buy Persian cucumbers. And then I love red peppers. I do purchase a lot more red peppers in the summer just because I love them in my salads, like my pasta salads. And I also really enjoy them on sandwiches. They just add that sweetness along with that crunchy texture that I love so much. And I don't always wrap my sandwiches like this, but it can really help hold it together, especially if you're taking it for your lunch. This is also really good if you put like a flavored cream cheese on one side, or I sometimes make these with hummus. There are so many delicious variations on this that it's possible to always keep this fresh. And I was talking about this balsamic glaze earlier, and sometimes I like to just get some fresh vegetables and add a little cheese over the top and balsamic vinegar, and it makes a delicious snack. If you like tuna, you could put some chunks of tuna out and it would make a delicious low-carb meal. But you know, when it's hot outside, this is exactly the kind of thing that I like to eat. And I love this balsamic glaze so much that I do tend to use a lot of it. But this is also great to put on your sandwiches to just give it that extra something, especially when you're making like a caprese sandwich. That is delicious. It's also good on top of a roasted vegetable sandwich. And since I just showed you a bagel sandwich, I'll show you another sandwich that I like to make on bagels. This one I actually used English muffins for, but I like to make this on bagels as well. I started with some roasted tomatoes that I made myself. Basically, you just put those in the toaster oven for a good long while and get them nice and sweet. And then I added some avocado and lightly salted that. And I've got a fried egg that's fried over medium with just a little bit of a soft yolk on the inside. And then I top that with cheese and of course with my favorite chili garlic sauce. But this is just so delicious. It's so creamy. And I just love making roasted tomatoes because they add that sweetness and that rich, robust flavor. I really love those on my sandwiches. Sun-dried tomatoes are kind of expensive on their own, but they're just so inexpensive to make with some basic Roma tomatoes, and they taste delicious. One of my other favorite sandwiches for summer is a curried salad sandwich. Here I'm going to make it with some chicken breasts, but you've seen me make this quite frequently with chickpeas. And I just have some apples, some celery, onions, mayo, curry powder, and raisins. Here's a shot of time that I made it with chickpeas, but I don't think I had any apple at that time. I do love the crunchiness and sweetness of the apple. It really does make the sandwich for me. But I just take some canned chicken and kind of separate that with a fork and get that ready, and then just mix the other ingredients together. It just couldn't be any easier. There are lots of variations on this that you can do as well, depending on whatever's in your house. You could add some cashews in here. You could add some lemon. but generally, this is the combination that I love the best. I also love this recipe for my low carb eaters because it is delicious on top of butter lettuce. You could also do romaine lettuce stalks if that is more affordable for you. I just absolutely love this. It is the freshest tasting, and of course, I like mine better with chickpeas, but either or, they are both fabulous. There's always so many ways to eat one recipe, like having it on the lettuce or putting it on this bread. Or if you wanted to, you could wrap this in a tortilla and that would make for a delicious wrap. Also in summer, I like to buy these hoagie rolls because I know I'm going to be eating a lot of sandwiches. And I think that these are the smaller ones. They come in a pack of 18 and these are like 39 cents each. So it's really not a bad deal. I do keep some of these in my freezer and then just pull them out right before I use them. And they are still fresh like that, but at least I can use them up a little bit easier since I'm just eating for myself. Otherwise they would get really quite stale. And if that happens, then I switch over to using the bread in a toasted hot sandwich. But then for this kind of sandwich, I do pick out a little bit of the interior just because I want to try to fit more of the chickpea salad into this. And I was also thinking this would probably be good made with tuna as well. Sometimes in the summer when it's really hot in my house, I don't even feel like eating bread too much. So sometimes I'll just use one of these salads and put it on some crackers and then have some maybe fresh fruit or something on the side, and that is basically my dinner. I also tend to eat a lot of open-faced sandwiches in the summer. It saves me eating extra bread, and it just is really delicious to me. Hummus is a big pantry staple for me in my house. Sometimes I like to just make some different vegetable concoctions with the hummus. Here, this is just the cucumbers with carrots and some olives, and that was delicious. And I added it to bread also. And don't forget last summer when I went to Sprouts and we discovered that they have an excellent sandwich deal. I was trying to get an updated price, but I wasn't able to find it online. I'm sure it's still a really great deal. I think it was like $5.99 for the combo with the chips and the water. But I just wanted to remind you of this because it's a really great deal to pick that up and take it to the park and enjoy the outdoors, especially while the weather is still cool. And it did inspire me for making my own sandwich. The big thing that I liked about it for my sandwich, because I got the hummus sandwich, was to put mayonnaise on one side of the bread and hummus on the other. I had never really thought to use those together for some reason, but it's a combination that I really love. And I love the Sprouts sandwich so much that it inspired me to recreate this at home, and of course it cut the costs way down. All right, friends, I hope I've gotten you in the mood for some summer sandwiches. I know your time is valuable, so I appreciate it so much that you choose to spend it with me, and thank you to all my wonderful supporters. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next Sunday.
Morning has broken, my windows are open. Wanna feel the wind blow through my hair. Which way do I follow? What happens tomorrow? I turn to you and hope you can guide the way. Sometimes I give up, just wanna be on my